So when you introduced me, you said University of Plymouth. Now, I'm assuming everyone's going to realise that that's in Devon in England, not in the US, for starters. So um, so gig rowing is, the full term is Cornish pilot gig rowing, but
Okay.
it's a little bit wider geographically now than just Cornwall. So it's fixed seat rowing for starters. So we don't have a slide like in normal boats that you see on TV.
This episode of the Smart Athlete Podcast is brought to you by Solpre, skincare for athletes. Whether you're in the gym, on the mats, on the road, or in the pool, we protect your skin so you're more comfortable in your own body. To learn more, go to solpre.com. Welcome to the Smart Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Funk. My guest today awesomely does things that I have no idea about, so I'm excited to be really educated today on some new topics, which is really cool. She is a PhD student at the University of Plymouth in marine biology. She's a world champion gig rower, which when my assistant Joe sent that over, I said, what the heck is that? And I had to do some research. She has two very fluffy border collies, which I'm sure I'm going to ask about here in a second. Welcome to the show, Madeline Steer.
Hi. Hello. Thanks for having me.
You know, one of the things I forgot before we got going, I forgot to ask is if you prefer Madie or Madeline, because I know your handle is Madie, but then Joe sent it to me as Madeline.
Madie. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm Madie.
Well, that's what I would assume, and that would be my tendency, because that's my niece is Madie as well. So I'm like, do I just want to call you Madie because that's what I'm used to, or is that what you would actually prefer?
No, Madeline's a serious side. No, no.
Well, I need like a very serious hat I can put on. You
Yeah,
know, Madeline, we're asking
turn me off.
questions. So you're telling me we'll start off with the border collies. You're telling me no, I don't have any kids, but I've got two border collies that assumingly make you exercise because they need exercise. How do you end up with two? Because it seems like
Yeah.
one high energy dog is enough for me. So what was that decision? Did they both come at the same time? How did that happen?
No, so we wanted border collie for a long time and eventually managed to persuade my partner to get one a couple of years ago. But I normally would rescue animals, but because it was our first dog, my partner persuaded me to get us to get a puppy. So we got Leith like nearly 3 years ago, and he's been great and we love him. But border collies do tend to attach onto one owner more than the other, and it was my idea, but Leith has sort of decided that Russ is his main person in the house. So I did all
Yeah.
his training, and I like love him to bits, but he just absolutely dotes on Russ, and it really irritates me. So then a friend sent me a text saying, "Oh, you don't want a deaf border collie from a farm, do you? It needs rehoming." This was last September.
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, send a video. Worst mistake ever. So she sent the video, and then I went to see the border collie that's deaf, and came home with her.
Yeah.
So yeah. So Leith has got a little sister. He's a big brother to a deaf border collie, but she's great. She's fine. She's settled in really well. So yeah, they're a really nice distraction from work.
I always feel like so I've not had a dog for the longest time. I had one growing up, but the policy at the time was dogs stay outside. So we didn't really like interact with the dog I had. And then growing up, it was like almost all my pets somehow I'll call them rescues, but they found me. Like
Mm.
the first pet that I ever had that was rescued, quote unquote, was a bird actually that had escaped from a local pet store and basically flew to my house and we caught and kept. And it's just been a series from there. Cats, our dog Toby, who's over here sleeping next to the radiator to stay warm. It seems like animals find us. But
Yeah.
thinking about dogs in particular, rescuing dogs, if you're trying to rescue cats, you've got this like territorial thing to deal with. Like if you bring a new cat into the house, the other cat's like pissed immediately. Like what is that? animal doing in my house. Dogs, I feel like, are easier to
Yeah,
kind of get into a pack and be like, okay, cool, another dog. Like, this is
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Leith was a little bit of an only child about it to start with, and
Hmm.
the problem, because Bee's deaf, he'd try and play with her, and then she couldn't. She was quite rough playing because she grew up on a farm with lots of dogs, and she had to be quite boisterous. So she'd go a bit too far with the playing, wouldn't
Hmm.
hear Leith like squeal, and then it would just end up in a fight. And
Yeah.
that happened for like a couple of months, but then they just don't play anymore, which is a bit of a shame, but it's a lot more harmonious just them staying. They get so much exercise that they just sleep when they're at home, sleep and eat in front of
Yeah.
the fire. So yeah, no, they're fine now, which I'm really glad. So yeah, because they'll be
Th-
around for a while. They're both really young, so we'll have them for potentially 15 years together, hopefully.
yeah, no, it's like the it's nice when there's peace in the house and the animals aren't like going crazy. We're fortunate with Toby that he's actually, it's kind of a long story. We found him and we met his original owner and then we ended up with him, but he's 11 now and he just sleeps most of the day. He has his little, is a Jack Russell Terrier mix, so
Mm.
he's not real big, but um, he has his little bouts of energy and then he's tuckered out for the next 20 hours and he's good to go.
We've actually discovered that Bee from the farm, we don't think she's pure border collie because I saw a picture on Instagram of an Australian blue heeler.
Hmm.
Um, and it was a spitting image of Bee. She doesn't really look like a border collie. We don't think she is, but and then I read all the breed description, and all of her mannerisms and habits and her herding. She goes pelting in and like goes for heels,
Hmm.
and snaps. She uses Leith as her herding thing. Um, Poor dog. He's very tolerant. But so we think she's mostly blue heeler, which is a really unusual breed in the UK. You don't get them. But the farmer doesn't think she's one of those. He's adamant she's pure border collie. So it doesn't really matter. She's nice. She's cool.
If I
She's
remember
happy.
off the top of my head, I think that's a really pretty dog. I feel like I know somebody with one.
They're really unusual. So they're the only domestic dog breed to have been bred originally with a wild dog because they're part dingo.
Hmm.
And she looks like a dingo. Like all my friends call her dingo dog.
Okay.
So I was like, actually, I think she might be part dingo. You
You're
were
like, what?
joking,
You're like,
but
wait a second, what did I bring in my house?
yeah. Yeah, she is nuts. So yeah, so we don't know what she is really, but she's happy, so that's the main thing.
Yeah, yeah. So I have to ask about the rowing, and you'll have to, just apologize the lack of knowledge. I come from land-based sports, being in the Midwest, so I'm in the middle of the country. We have some lakes, but like water sports are just not huge here.
No,
Um, so I've got a lot of questions. First, I guess I could just start with what is gig rowing?
yeah. Um, so when you introduced me, you said University of Plymouth. Now I'm assuming everyone's going to realise that that's in Devon in England, not in the US for starters. So um, the so gig rowing is the full term is Cornish pilot gig rowing, but
Okay.
it's a little bit wider geographically now than just Cornwall. So it's fixed seat rowing for starters. So we don't have a slide like in normal boats that you see on TV, and it's a very traditional form of rowing in the southwest of England, and it's really old. So the boats originally, like we race in our big championship, the World Championships that we hold over here. We race against boats that are like 200 years old. So
Hmm.
they're 32-foot long. They're solid wood. They're clinker built, so they're traditional build. There's only about 6 boat builders in the southwest. There's one in London as well now. Um, and they're built from mainly elm, so originally Cornish elm, but we can't get elm in Cornwall anymore, so we ship it in with a hardwood keel. And they're built specifically for speed, so they're pilot boats. So the original boats were in the Scilly Isles, which are the islands off of the foot of Land's End, and also in Newlyn, like on the mainland, just on the mainland in Cornwall. And they are, so it's 6 rowers with a coxswain steering at the back. You've got 1 oar each, and you also have a pilot seat in the very front. So a pilot would sit in the front. They'd see a tall ship coming in to the Scilly Isles, really, really rocky, really, really dangerous navigation for shipping. So they had these teams of people that they were privately employed. So the boats were privately owned. They'd employ a team of rowers. And the idea was the fastest gig to get a ship and put their pilot on board would get the job, which got them money to bring it safely into port. Usually from the Scilly Isles, they'd be going either maybe coming into the Scillies, but usually going over towards Penzance Way or Falmouth. So that's where the pilot boat bit comes in. And because they were built for speed, they weren't always very well paid. So the crews liked to race. So they used to race each other for money, and it was kind of a bit of a sport. This is like 200 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it was really popular, but only in a very specific place in Cornwall. So sort of then obviously steam engines came in and the boats weren't used anymore, but a couple of boats did survive on the Scillies. And then in the 80s, a couple of towns in Cornwall, Mevagissey and Newquay, especially Newquay Rowing Club, went over to the Scillies and rescued some boats that were rotting on the beaches, brought them back over to Newquay, which is the north coast of Cornwall, renovated them and started up a really small rowing circuit racing in Cornwall. And that was in the 80s. And then it just got more and more popular. So there were more towns in Cornwall joining in. So new boats were built. And they used a blueprint from a boat called the Treffry, which is still in Newquay. And all new gigs had to be designed to exactly the same specification, so that there were rules. You couldn't, because you can build really fast handmade wooden boats, like, right. But obviously they need to all be fairly similar. So yeah, through the 90s and early 2000s, it just got more and more popular. So I started rowing when I left university in 2005. I came down, so I saw these boats when I was holidaying in Cornwall when I was a kid. But I grew up in a couple of counties east, so there weren't any clubs there. But when I moved down to near Plymouth, I saw these boats on the water and I was like, oh, those are those boats that I used to see in Cornwall when I was on holiday. So I started rowing, and the first World Championships that I went to in 2006, there was 89 boats on the start line, which is a lot. So the Scilly Isles called them the World Championships, and initially it was just sort of Cornwall and Devon, but actually now we do have clubs come across from America. There's a big gig rowing scene in Holland, in the Netherlands, and we also get some French teams over, some Faroe Islands, but it's kind of mainly a UK thing generally, apart from that one competition in the Scillies. But now, last year on the start line for the women, there were 169 boats. But they're fantastic boats. They're handmade, so they all have their own little personalities as a boat. But they're all hand painted as well, in all different colours, and they're named. So the club I row for, we have white boats, and so not hugely bright, but our names are Amazon, and there's a reason for all the names. You name them after something local. So we've got Essa, Miller's Daughter, and the Anne Glanville is our best boat. So sort of you renew your fleet, because they're wooden, they take a lot to maintain. So we sell off the oldest boat after sort of 10 years or so and buy a new boat, and then that becomes our best racing boat. But they're quick. I think the men can get up to sort of nearly 10 knots, maybe 9 knots. It's, we can go pretty fast, but it's all in the sea. So we don't row on inland water, we row at sea, and they're designed to cope with really rough water.
So I am not familiar with knots in terms of translating it to land speed. What does that translate into kilometers an hour? Do you know?
I'd have to Google. Yeah. This is telling you, we're like, some things are metric, some things are imperial. I literally have absolutely no idea. Hang on, let me Google it.
That's one of the things where I was like, I was gonna Google it. And I was like, well, I'll
In
just ask you first
kilometers.
before I start like clacking away on my keyboard trying to figure it out.
I don't even, we don't even use kilometers an hour here, so
Well, see, I was gonna ask for miles per hour because it's
19.
what we use, but I was just like, I was thinking you would be kilometers an hour, so
No, we're miles an hour. So it's
okay.
18, 10 knots is 18 kilometers an hour. Um, hang on.
So it's probably knots are almost yeah, like 11 miles an hour.
It's fairly similar, to be honest. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not too far off. Um, yeah, I mean we don't have a speedo in the boat, so the only time we can really know how fast we're going is if we've got a boat running alongside us, and they've got a speedo on. So, but yeah, it's around that. You can, I think, somewhere in the country, men's teams managed to get a water skier or a wakeboarder up behind them. They were going
Okay.
fast enough for that. So yeah, but then the boats also, if you have a following sea, they can surf. So like the Australian surf boats, but it's scary because they're not really meant to surf. So like you'd be going along and the wave would like pick up the back,
Hmm.
and this is where the rudder is. So it's good because you pick up speed and you can make quite a lot of, um, you can overtake people potentially, and it has happened on finishing lines of major championships where somebody in second place has surfed past the people that were winning the whole race, and overtaken them and won. But the problem is the rudder comes out of the water and you don't have steerage. So, and you're going quite fast and getting, increasing speed. So it's okay as long as you don't catch a crab, we call it. So when the oar catches under the water and you can't control it. So sometimes you have to ship your blades, if you're going to surf. But it doesn't happen a lot, but when it happens, it's quite spectacular.
This seems like a strategic gamble where it's like, okay, you know you can't steer, but you're like, well, we're not gonna win. We gotta try something,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
might
But
as
it's kind
well.
only you can only catch a certain wave because the boats are quite long and quite narrow. So
Right.
it's only a certain like frequency of wave that
Okay.
would actually pick the boat up. I've been in a boat where I have surfed quite very fast over quite a long period. Like we had to ship our oars and we were doing like the coxswain thinks we were doing about 19 knots,
Mhm.
which we were planing, so the boat lifted out of the water a bit, and
Right.
the spray coming off. It was pretty scary. We really wanted it to stop, to be honest. So
Well, yeah, I mean that's you. So you're talking about going 9, 10 knots, and then if you're going 19 knots, like even if like say you did that all the time, you would probably get a little more used to it. But
yeah,
anytime it's like, okay, I'm used to whatever
mm,
speed, like on my bike, say I'm going 10 miles an hour, and then I go down a hill and I'm going 20 miles an hour. Well, like the perception of speed, the
yeah,
especially in your case, the lack of control, because you've doubled your speed, like there's just a whole other um,
yeah.
perception to what's going on where you're like, I'm not comfortable with this. I don't like it.
Well, the whole thing about rowing is that you're in control, like majorly in control.
Yeah.
Um, we plan our start, our first 4 minutes. So most of our races are a kite course. So we go out and you row maybe 4 minutes, 6 minutes, and then you turn around a buoy. So you turn to the left around. We have stroke side and bow side. So like stroke side will pull us around the mark, and then there's 3 marks normally. So you do a kite shape and then back into the start finish line. But the whole race we plan, so that we know exactly what we're doing. But you can't plan. We kind of try and practice a bit for surfing because you have to catch the wave, like if you're a surfer. So you need to increase your stroke rate and shorten your stroke a little bit and get the boat, up onto the wave.
Mhm.
But it doesn't. I mean, surfing's not really something that happens that often. But trying to push into heavy seas and wind is more like it is very common. Like we row
Mhm.
in any conditions. So um, getting used to as a crew rowing against wind and tide and into waves is quite important, because the gunnels, like the side of the boat, isn't that high, so on flat water they're really nice to row, but technique over time has changed. So, I mean, I don't know that any of your viewers might Google it, Cornish pilot gig rowing, but some of the older pictures, you see people, you reach right forwards at an angle, and then you follow the arc of the oar, and they finish not leaning back that far, but with their oar handles right over, like, move me, so right over here. Whereas, and that's just not very good. Like, you're not strong at this point if you're twisting your body. You want to be fairly straight and row like modern boats row. So now we row a lot straighter. So we pull our oar in a little bit and we reach out over our feet like we're doing a deadlift, and then we row into our chest, but we lean right far back, and that's how you get the length of the stroke. So because you're leaning back and you've got your hands here, if a wave comes up and like envelopes your oar at the end, you're stuck here, really. You can't get it out very easily. So that's what we practice a lot of, is rowing in heavy seas. I mean, Plymouth, where we train, is a natural harbour, so we don't really get to row out into open sea here. So we drill it into ourselves when it's rough in the river. We drill it in how we're going to cope in rougher water. But I mean, the crew that I've rowed with for the last 3 years has got between us about 100 years of experience. We've all rowed for sort of a minimum of 10 years, really. And then some of the girls started as juniors, so as kids, and the dad coxswains us, so
Okay.
there's a lot of experience in the boat, and that's where you can get some, quite a lot of benefit, really, from the experience. Because the sport's growing in popularity a lot in the UK, there's a lot of new clubs, and they do struggle on the rowing circuit because they haven't got the knowledge there of how to make the boats go fast. You can, it's not brute force and ignorance. It might be fixed seat. We might be rowing a pure wooden boat with wooden oars, but it's not brute force and ignorance. There is a lot of technique involved, a lot of technique, and trying to get you rowing really tightly when you've got wind and tide and waves. It takes a long time, and you get, like anything, you just hit the sweet spot. And in a case where you've got a crew of 6, it's an amateur sport, so we're all working and we've got to be able to get down the river to train together. But if you just can get that 6 people together that can commit the same level and train to get the fitness there, and then they also click in the boat. So, we row very similar together. We complement each other. The boat sits nice and flat in the water. We're all doing exactly the same stroke, so it's not, wobbling around because people are doing different things. Because every little thing will take speed off the boat. So it took, the club I row for has been around for sort of 30 years. And the men have been very successful in the 90s and early 2000s, but it wasn't until I think it was 2016, the crew won for the first time at the World Championships. And then one of the girls fell pregnant, so they needed a replacement. And so I went up into the crew from the B crew, which was nerve-wracking going back to the World Championships as a defending champions, but with me as the addition. I was like, oh God, if we come second or worse, like, there was quite a lot of pressure. So, but thankfully it was fine. We won.
So I'm wondering, like, how long does a race actually last time-wise?
So they do vary because they're slightly different formats. So during the summer, it's a summer sport, really. So we have a regatta every weekend during the summer, wherever in Cornwall we decide to go. So that every single club will have their own regatta, but we we stick to sort of our area so that we don't have to travel that far. And also, Cornwall is still kind of the hub of the sport, and it's where our main competition is. So we want to race competitive races against our main competitors. So we race in Cornwall, and those are the kite courses. So they can range between like 12 and like 18 minutes.
Okay.
It will vary depending on they'll shorten it if the weather's really bad because we just don't go as fast. So and then the very first race of the year is the World Championships in the Scillies, which is a bit weird, but it's just always been that weekend. So that is actually straight courses, so they're kind of sprints. You do a seeding race, is the very first race of the day on the Saturday. So you have it. It's amazing. Actually, this is something that's probably worth Googling. It's on YouTube. The very first race of the World Championships for the men and the women, like they're two separate races, but all of the gigs go on one start line. So you've got 170 boats on one start line. That's like about 1.5 to 2 miles long, and they have drones up to try and get it straight. So it kind of ends up being a big banana.
Yeah.
But we all race, we all go off at the same time. It sounds like a bit like you're in a war zone. And then that seeds you then into categories. So you have the top group, the first 12 boats are in the A group, second 12 in the B group, so on until the letters are the scoreboard get bigger and bigger every year as more boats join, more clubs join. So, and then you have sprint races so it's all between the islands in the Scillies. There's lots of little islands. So we row from Tresco back across to St Mary's into the harbour, and that's about 1.3 nautical miles. So it takes us, we train very specifically for 12 minutes. So our whole training programme for the 6 months before the championships is aiming to get us as fit as we can be for 12 minutes. Ironically, for all the years I've been in the A crew, we've had a following wind or waves, and we've done it in like less than 10. So you get to the end, and you're like, obviously you're knackered, but you're like, oh, that was quick.
It wasn't so bad. It was okay.
We've wasted those extra 2 minutes for every training session for the last 6 months.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, it's not quite. It's a little bit longer, but it's like comparable to 5K speed, where it's like I'm not this fast anymore, but like trying to run like in the 15s for your 5K, and it's like if you ran like a downhill course and you finished at 13, you're not going to be like,
no.
Well, I wasted all those months of training to miss 2 minutes. It's like, okay, no, it compounded, and then we just had things in our favor. It's like a nice bonus. It's like a little dessert on top, a little treat where it's like, hey, you could have gone the extra 2 minutes, but we just gave it to you today.
Well, to be honest, we couldn't. So the last couple of years, so 2017 and 18, we won. The first year we won by a couple of boat lengths, but 2018 we had a good race with a Cornish crew from Falmouth. Those ladies used to be multiple world champions about 6-7 years ago, and they came back together as a crew after various like children and operations and stuff. They, I think, wanted to see how they pitched up against the new kids on the block, which was us. So they came back 2 years ago. So the very first championships we had together with them, we managed to beat them by about a boat length, I think, by the end of the 11-minute race or 12-minute race. But last year, they're a much bigger crew because you're fixed seat. It's all about leverage. So if you're tall, you're a bigger lever. So it's an advantage, and they are a big crew. We're all quite small. I'm the shortest at 5'5"-ish. So we had a big job on our hands. We knew we were going to struggle to beat them. So we saved ourselves for the final. We didn't really race until the final, and then we gave it our best shot. And they were beating us by a boat length for the whole race. But then the last 200 meters we put our spurt on. And we got nearly level with them. And then we went over the line, and nobody knew who had won, and we overtook them with the run on the boat. Like we all stopped rowing, but the run of the boat, our boat was going faster. But it was a photo finish, and they got it. So, but I've never experienced a feeling like it when sort of 200 meters to go, you're gaining on them, and the coxswain, Steve, our coach, who race coxes us as well, was absolutely screaming at us because we were doing it. We were gaining on them, and he was like, "Come on, you're gonna do it!" But he was like, "You need more, you need more," and you're giving like, I mean, I can't really remember the last minute. And the trouble is the oar's not tied in, so you can't drop it at the end. Like we were like falling off our seats, and but although we came second, like that was, as races go, you can't really ask for a sort of better experience if you want competition. And we wanted competition. We didn't want to dominate the sport. Well, obviously it's nice, but you're there to compete.
Yeah.
So there's a challenge laid down. You know, they were a big crew. We had to be super fit and super technically accurate to beat them. So yeah, we nearly did it, but just not quite. So.
No, I absolutely understand. And there are like a lot of people, like kind of surrounding family and some friends, depending, don't really understand is like, so I do triathlon now. I ran originally and then post college began doing triathlon. And historically, I basically try to move up so that I don't win. Like I've only ever won one race in my like 20 years of racing. And it's partly because there's something enjoyable like about getting your butt kicked and knowing you put everything out there that you could. Like there's still a challenge, and like you were pushed to the limit, not just like you said, if you're just dominating everybody, that would be nice in one aspect, but then it's like, am I really being challenged? You know, am I in the right class of people? Is it too easy because I'm so much better, or am I racing people that just aren't as fit? So there's something in there about like knowing that you could have gotten beat, or that you were just barely, that makes it more exciting than if it was just like in your case, if you'd won by 10 boat lengths, you'd be like, okay, was it really a race?